Alright, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are doing a continuation of my little free Learn Astrology course. Okay, we have done what is astrology. We have done how to read your birth chart. We have done the 12 zodiac signs, so now we are moving on to the planets in astrology. I'm going to break this video up into two parts because I am done with these ridiculously long videos. I'm putting a stop to it. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm cutting videos up, guys. I'm being harder on myself about this because it's just too much. So today we are doing the inner planets or the personal planets in astrology. And then the next video that I post will be the outer planets or the social and generational planets in astrology. Once that is done, I will put the outer planets video right here. And yes, there are still flies. I don't know what to do about it. I am doing an absolutely free astrology course online. If you would like a link to that playlist, that will be right here if you want to watch any of the videos that I previously mentioned. So before we get started, let's get the advertising out of the way. So I sell birth chart readings, tarot readings, a bunch of kind of metaphysical readings over on my website, shainaemily.com. And also just thank you to anybody who's purchased a reading from me. I absolutely love talking to all of you guys. It really makes my day. You all have been so lovely. So just thank you so much for supporting this channel. And I just wanted to say a big mwah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've also been insanely active on my TikTok. I've been posting like almost every single day. My TikTok is at shaina.emily. I also talk about astrology. It's much more short form. It's much more kitschy. It's much more like, you know, so if you don't want something that's so like, like this channel can be, check out my TikTok. And also I have a personal Instagram that I pretty much exclusively post my dogs on. So what are the planets in astrology? As I mentioned before, you know, for every planet in the sky, you have a different zodiac sign that is in that planet. So for example, we all know what our sun sign is, okay? Hey, what's your sign? Whatever that answer is, that is your sun sign. But you also have a moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all the way down. I will be talking about what every single planet means. So if the zodiac signs represent the quality, the kind of personality type, the planets represent where that personality type or quality falls into our life. So yes, maybe our basic personality is like an Aquarius, but do we love like an Aquarius? Maybe, maybe not. Do we fight like that zodiac sign? Do we have dreams like that zodiac sign, right? All those different kind of qualities make up a whole personality. So that's why we are all very complicated people, because there are basically 10 major planets. There's a bunch of other asteroids, nodes, all that kind of stuff, which I actually will be going over in the future. But today we are sticking with the personal planets. Our personal planets basically represent our different drives and aspects of our personality. The inner planets or the personal planets are going to be the ones that I'm talking about today. So I'll be discussing the sun through Mars, which is the sun, the moon, Mercury, and Mars. And Venus. Don't worry, I forgot to say it, but I did include it in this video. It's really embarrassing that I forgot to say it. Let's move on. These are personal planets because they're closest to us in the solar system. If you look here, the solar system, you'll see that this chunk of planets is the closest to Earth. And so that's why they are personal to us. They are closest to us. Their orbit is the fastest. I will be going over each of the orbits, but because their orbit is the fastest and a lot of them are closely aligned with the Earth's orbit, that makes them feel like we affect them rather than the outer planets, which feels like the outer planets affect us, okay? This feels like, yes, this is a part of my personality. I subconsciously chose to be like this for better or for worse. That is the personal planets. Because the outer planets move so slowly, chances are most of your generation or like school grade will share the same outer planets or generational planets as you have. However, personal planets change much faster. So unless somebody's born on basically the exact same day and year as you, chances are they will have different personal planets to you. That's why they're personal. They're mine. You don't have my personal planets, only I do, bitch. So let's start with the most obvious, the one that everybody knows and loves, the sun. What does the sun represent in astrology? So the sun is basically our main personality, our ego, our essence, just our main vibe, okay? Because the sun is a very radiating energy, this is the energy that we naturally radiate, right? The sun radiates heat. It's this big heaping ball of fire. So of course our sun is the ego because everything revolves around the sun. Sounds so egotistical of the sun, right? Everything revolves around me, bitch. That's because it is. The sun moves approximately 53 seconds a day. It moves just under 1 degree a day. It takes approximately 1 month to move through one sign, and it takes approximately 1 year to move through the entire cycle. From about March 19th through like the 22nd to the next year's March 19th to 22nd, the sun will run its course through each of the 12 zodiac signs, going from Aries all the way through the 12 zodiac signs back to Aries. And if you want to know about the 12 zodiac signs, I already talked about it and I'll link that video right here. I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty bad at guessing people's sun sign. I don't know what it is. I feel like I have sun sign blindness in a lot of ways. But the sun is the easiest to understand because it's just like I said, it's your main vibe, your main essence. It's who you are, your personality, right? It is what you want out of life. It is how you want to come across, who you want to be, who you want to embody. The sun is so easy to spot in a birth chart because the glyph looks like a sun. You know, it looks like there's a dot in the middle for the sun and then there's a circle around it, which is basically just like all the planets orbiting around the sun, because the sun is the center of our universe, okay? And you are the center of your universe, okay? The sun also many times reflects your father in your life. So if you're wanting to know how you viewed your father, you can look to your sun sign and the aspects and the house, and that is probably the influence that your father had upon you, or at least how you were affected by your father's influence upon you. The sun rules the sign of Leo. Leo is very braggadocious, boisterous. This is who I am. This is how I take up space. The sun is how we take up space in our chart, how we show off, how we kind of spread our peacock feathers, how we want people to see us, how we want people to view us, what we're proud of. All that kind of stuff is very much the sun. How we show who we are in a very extroverted manner. The sun is your identity. I'll go over what the rising sign is, but I always say the rising sign is like your first layer. The sun sign is like who you are, your main layer, right? You. And then your moon sign is your innermost layer. It's kind of like what's behind you or what's inside you, what's in your innermost core. So if your sun is what you want in astrology, then your moon is what you need in astrology. The sun is kind of like your second layer if your rising sign is your first layer. And so the moon is your innermost, deepest soul layer. The moon is what you need in astrology. The moon represents your emotions and your emotional life, how you were nurtured and how you were cared for. The sun represents how you were shown to display your ego and your sense of self, your identity, your vitality. Your moon is how you were shown to care about yourself and others, how little or how much care you were given or received in life. Your moon also many times represents your mother or the nurturing figure in your life. The moon changes signs approximately every 2.5 days. It's the fastest changing planet or luminary in the zodiac. Technically, the sun and the moon are luminaries. We do dump them in and throw them in with the other planets, but they are technically called luminaries. The moon takes approximately 28 days to cycle through every single zodiac sign. Yes, the moon is very, very closely linked to women's period cycles. It's no coincidence that the moon rules femininity, the sun rules masculinity, the moon rules the mother, the sun rules the father, and the moon is very closely linked to women's cycles. The moon is very changing. As I mentioned, it goes through each of the signs way faster than any other planet in the solar system. And that's because our moods are a lot more unstable than our personality and our ego. Yes, the sun is not crazy stable. It changes sign about every month, but the moon is very unstable. It changes sign every 2.5 days. That's why it reflects moodiness and changeability. The moon's glyph, so easy. It looks like the moon, right? It looks like a crescent moon. There's not much to explain here. After you first meet somebody, you know, after you've shown them your rising sign and they've gotten through to you, just your basic personality, you're getting a little bit more comfortable with them, but you don't know them fully. You've shown off your sun. Now the moon you will show only when you know this person on a very intimate level, on a very intimate basis. The moon you only show to like your family or the people closest to you. You only really show when you're at home and you're comfortable and you're alone, or you're with those people that you're able to be vulnerable with. The moon rules Cancer. The sun is very much about me, who I am, how I express myself, me. The moon is much more emotional. The moon is much more vulnerable. The moon we only share to the people that we are closest to. The moon very much reflects our family home, what makes us feel comfortable, what makes us feel safe. So it makes sense that the moon rules the sign of Cancer. Cancer is all about about emotional intimacy, emotional vulnerability, my feelings, how I'm feeling, and the moon very much reflects that. Now, in the Western world, we talk a lot about sun sign compatibility. Oh, I'm a Gemini and my boyfriend's a Sagittarius. Is that compatible? But I personally, as being a Cancer rising, I am ruled by the moon. I think moon sign compatibility is so vital. How you deal with each other's emotions, how happy you are emotionally, has so much to do with the safety and comfort that you will find within that relationships, whether that be familiar, whether that be your partner, whether that be your friendship, whether that be, teacher student, whatever it is. When we're with somebody who has a compatible moon sign, we feel safe with them. We feel heard, we feel understood, and we feel known. As much as our sun sign is what we want out of life, what we want out of a person, what we want to be, the moon sign is what we need. I truly believe the moon sign cannot be bargained with or bartered with. The sun sign can be bargained and bartered with a little bit more. Oh, you can say, I'll give you space to be yourself and you can give me space to be myself, and that's okay, right? That's like sun sign compatibility. Moon sign compatibility, these are my emotional needs. How dare you wipe off my emotional needs and excuse them and pretend like they're nothing. You need emotional compatibility to feel safe. You need your moon to feel safe and understood and heard, to feel at home. And that's why I think moon sign compatibility is so important. As much as we want to seek out our sun sign in life, we need to seek out our moon sign. We need to get our emotional needs met. We need to feel safe at home, nurtured, loved, and that is what allows us to be our moon sign, be vulnerable, and be comfortable. When you're able to be your moon sign, or when you feel comfortable enough to just express your moon sign naturally, it kind of feels like you're naked. And that can be very vulnerable. As I mentioned, that can feel very intimidating, right? It doesn't have to literally mean being naked, but you feel very exposed. The moon is very personal to us because it changes sign every 2.5 days. So unless somebody was born on literally the same exact day and year, or the day after or day before potentially, nobody else shares your moon sign. That makes up you. Aspects to the moon change very quickly. If you're wondering what aspects are in astrology, I actually already have that video up. I'll link it right here. I love aspects. I have a whole aspect series going. So the sun sign is your basic ego, essence, personality, vitality. Your moon sign represents your emotions, how you express yourself emotionally. How do you deal with the hard situations? Are you thick-skinned? Are you thin-skinned? Are you super emotional, or are you detached from your emotions? It also shows you your mother or your nurturing figure. How nurturing and loving, emotional and expressive was your mother, or how distant and detached was your mother to you? How well do you feel like you knew your mom? How well do you feel like you knew your family? How comfortable did you feel at home in your family life? That's what the moon will very much show and tell you. So even though the rising sign is not a planet or a luminary, I do just want to talk about it in this video just because it is such a prominent energy. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people ask, now that astrology is gaining more prominence and gaining more popularity, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people ask, what's your sun, moon, and rising? Well, your rising sign is the first layer. I go over how to find your rising sign and more about it. It's also called the first house and the ascendant. I go over that a lot more in the how to read your birth chart video, so hopefully you understand a little bit about it. But your rising sign is what determines your houses and what determines your much more individualized birth chart. You may think, okay, so if somebody's born on the same day and year as me, does that mean that they have the exact birth chart as me? That doesn't mean I'm very individual. And that's where the rising sign comes in. Unless somebody was born at the exact same day, same year, exact same moment, exact same place, exact same time to the minute, nobody else will share your same birth chart. And I know you're wondering about twins. The first twin is the sun sign and it shows off that. The second twin is the moon sign. It shows off that. If you're a triplet, the third triplet that comes out is the Mercury sign. And that's kind of how it goes, okay? So anyways, that's not the point of this video. Let's talk about the rising sign. As I mentioned, it's your first house or ascendant. The rising sign changes very quickly in astrology. The rising sign changes roughly every 2 hours, give or take. Now, in America, and depending on where you are in the world and how close you are to the equator, the rising sign does change and stay at different rising signs for different lengths of time. So for example, in America, because of where we're based, all the way from Gemini, the 3rd sign, to Capricorn, the 10th sign, it stays in each rising sign roughly every 2 hours. However, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus, are actually the most rare rising signs in America because it stays in that rising sign for the least amount of time. I think it can be under even 1 hour sometimes. So those rising signs you actually will see a lot more rarely than you will say a Leo rising that you see a lot in America. But that changes depending on what country you were born. So the rising sign cycles through all 12 zodiac signs approximately every day. So approximately every 24 hours, give or take. It's a little bit off, but for the most part, that's what it is. The rising sign is your first layer in astrology. It's just kind of how you come across, your first impression, how you see the world initially. When you're going into a new space, how do you approach that new space and these new people? That is your rising sign. When you're going into a new space, rarely are you going to just show off your moon sign instantly, unless maybe you have your, moon sign conjunct your ascendant in the first house or something, but that's a whole other story. For the most part, off the bat, we show off our rising sign, okay? The rising sign has the most to do with appearance, how we look physically, how our face looks, how we dress, how we show ourselves. That is the rising sign. A lot of times it's coined as shallow, but sometimes it can be, but it's really just your first impression. It's your first kind of most surface layer. Yes, it doesn't go that deep, but to a certain extent it does, because it is how you interact with the world, how you see the world, and how you view the world off of first bat. The rising sign will show you a lot of if you're more introverted or if you're more extroverted, feminine or masculine, which I go over in my 12 zodiac sign video. The rising sign also has a lot to do with the expectations that were placed upon you by your family from a young age. How your family expected you to be, act, and look has a lot to do with what rising sign you have, and also what's in your first house. And your relationship with your rising sign has a lot to do with how do you like your typecast. If you at all are into acting, you'll know what typecast means, but basically, you get put into a box of, this is how agents or casting directors are gonna see you. This is your typecast. That probably has a lot to do with what your rising sign is. What people assume of you when they first meet you before they really know you, they're making assumptions based on your rising sign. Sometimes the rising sign can feel a little bit like a burden if it's more poorly aspected, because it's like, I come across like this even though this isn't aligned with me. Sometimes you have a rising sign that's really well aspected with the rest of your chart and you feel like, yes, this is how I come across, this is how I want to come across, and I'm glad people take me this way because this is truly how I am. It all just depends on aspects, which again, I go over in another video. So again, rising sign is your first layer, how you come across, how people see you, how people view you, how you look, how you dress, how you act upon first impression, how you interact with the world. Sun sign, kind of the next layer, how you chill out, how the vibes that you give off, your main essence, your personality, your vitality, your ego, how you want to be seen, how you want to show up in the world, the things that you want in life, how you want to act, what you want to get out of life is very much your sun sign. And then you have your innermost layer, okay? Your moon sign, your emotions, your emotional life, how you want to be nurtured, how you are nurtured, how much or how little you express your emotions. All right, so now that you kind of understand your sun, moon, and rising, let's go into the next 3 personal planets, which are Mercury, Venus, and Mars. These are so important. These are not to be discounted, and especially Mercury is not to be discounted. People really don't pay attention to Mercury in astrology. I found people really don't care about it, and I think that you are just wildly underestimating the importance of Mercury, because Mercury has all and everything to do with communication, how we talk, how we think, how we verbally express ourselves, how we communicate ourselves, right? So the moon is how you feel, sure, but how do you communicate how you feel? That's shown by your Mercury. Your sun is who you are and what you want out of life, but how do you communicate who you are and what you want out of life? That is your Mercury. It's all about what's going on up here and how it's expressed externally. I honestly think people forget about Mercury because it is kind of the smallest, little tiniest planet in the zodiac, so it's almost kind of like it's forgotten about in a little bit of a way, even though it's so prominent in our life. What are we doing all the time? Thinking a billion thoughts. Our brains, pretty much for the most part, our brains are going a million miles a minute. I know mine is. I talk so fast. And how fast I talk, how I communicate to you, how I share my speech, that's shown through my Mercury sign. So if you like how I'm delivering this video, if you like how I'm communicating these ideas to you in this video, if you're understanding how what I'm teaching you, that probably means that you like my Mercury sign and you like how our Mercury signs are communicating to each other. Mercury's orbit is fairly close to the sun's orbit. It takes approximately 14 to 30 days to change sign. Now, Mercury's orbit is a little bit more erratic because once we get into Mercury and the rest of the planets, there is something called a retrograde. Now, I will go over retrogrades and what every single planet is like retrograde in a different video. I'll actually link it once I have it up here. It just means that in your chart, there's a little R next to it and the energy is turned inwards. So now that we're moving into the other planets, the time that it takes to change sign is a little bit more erratic, but Mercury, as I mentioned, takes approximately 14 to 30 days to change through one sign, and it takes approximately 1 year to go through every single sign in the zodiac. So the thing about Mercury is that it has a lot to do with what your sun sign is. So Mercury can only be one sign away on either side from your sun sign. Let's take sign 5. Let's take Leo, for example. If your sun is in Leo, you can only have a Mercury in Leo, sign 5, Mercury in Virgo, sign 6, or Mercury in Cancer, sign 4. There's nobody in this entire world who has a Leo sun, Sagittarius Mercury. That is completely and 100% impossible as far as this reality on Earth. That is why there is some legitimacy if like people were to guess your sign and you're to be like, oh, I'm gonna guess you're like a Cancer, and you're to be like, oh no, I'm not a Cancer, I'm a Gemini. Maybe you have your Mercury sign in Cancer, and maybe that's what they're picking up on, for example. So yes, Mercury is all about communication style. How do you think and how are those thoughts communicated? How do you share information? How do you pick up information? How do you learn things? How do you teach things? Are you a fast learner? Are you a slow learner? Are you a conventional learner? Are you an unconventional learner? Are you an emotional learner? Are you a visual learner? Are you a kinesthetic learner? Are you a learner that only learns when you read something? Like, what kind of learner? That sounds weird after a while. What kind of learner are you, right? That has to do with Mercury. What kind of speaker are you? Do you like public speaking or do you hate public speaking? Do you have an extroverted Mercury or an introverted Mercury? Are you a much more artistic right brain kind of person? Are you type B? That'll show up in the more artistic, creative Mercury signs. Are you a more type A, left brain kind of person? Are you a much more, cut and dried kind of learner? Like, I want everything to be organized or strategized. Are you an N? Are you a, imaginary learner? If you know Myers-Briggs, or are you an S? Are you a much more strategic kind of learner? If you know Myers-Briggs. That is what your Mercury sign tells you. And the reason why Mercury signs are so important between relationships, because everybody always says, like, the stereotype of like, oh, I just want my partner to make me laugh. Well, that has to do with Mercury. Who you think is funny and what you think is funny is all about the Mercury sign that you have and what other people have. Nobody wants a relationship where they feel like they can't talk to the other person. Nobody wants a relationship where it's just a bunch of dead air and you have nothing to say and it's just a bunch of awkward silences. That has everything to do with Mercury. Or maybe you are somebody that doesn't mind a lot of silence and is very comfortable within silence, and that's because your Mercury is a more watery, introverted Mercury. Or maybe you hate silence and you just want jabber, jabber, jabber all the time because your Mercury is in like Gemini or Sagittarius and you cannot stand silence, okay? Right? Mercury will show all that kind of stuff. Mercury also has a lot to do with like, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? What are you naturally good at? What do you quick at picking up? What do you struggle to pick up? Are you a math person, science person, artistic person? Are you really sensitive to what people say to you? Do you take it really to heart, or does it just brush off your shoulder and you don't really care, right? It all has to do with what your Mercury sign is. Mercury is so important. Please do not underestimate it. Please pay more attention to it because we are interacting with everybody's Mercury all the time. Now, Mercury is a lot about duality. So there is not just one ruling planet like the other two luminaries. There are actually two. That is Gemini and Virgo. And that's because there are kind of two sides to Mercury. Like I mentioned, there's like the crazy scatterbrained, it's all about like how you organize your life, how you go about things, and there are kind of two ways to go about it. We have two sides of our brain, left brain and right brain. The left brain, or type A person, is like the Virgo side of Mercury. Much more strategic, much more on it, much more organized. Say it like it is. No questions asked. A plus B equals C. And then there's the right brain, type B side of Mercury, Gemini. A little bit over here, a little bit over there, all over there. Imagination, thinking, arts, rhythm, music, blah, 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 right? Like, you have to read in between the lines of what a Gemini Mercury says, right? What am I thinking? What am I this? What am I that? What am I that, right? Virgo's just kind of like, I think you're stupid. And Gemini Mercury's like, oh, wow, you're really smart. And you're like, Wait, are they telling the truth or not, right? There's a lot more reading in between the lines with Mercury. And that's why Mercury is a much more complicated planet. Mercury is a much more complicated concept. Our brains are so complicated. So of course, it's ruled by two different signs. And there's a big duality side to Mercury. The glyph has little devil horns on it because our brains and our mind can play tricks on us. It can be very devilish. It can be a little bit, right? The sun, as I've mentioned, is very masculine. It's our ego. The moon is very obviously our feminine side, our emotions. Mercury as the third planet, it's a lot more, kind of rides the line there. It's a lot more devilish. It's a lot more questionable. It's a lot more back and forth. It is neither feminine nor masculine. It is, ambidextrous. It is androgynous. Virgo is a feminine sign and it's ruled by Mercury. Gemini is a masculine sign and it's ruled by Mercury. So it is both feminine and masculine. You cannot assign a gender to the brain and how you communicate. Sorry about that fly. It's driving me crazy too. Very Mercury, that little thing that's buzzing around in your head that's irritating you. Obsessive thinking is very much Mercury. All right, now on to Venus. The Venus glyph is so easy to remember. It just looks like the female sign, it just looks like feminine. Now, everybody has a Venus, whether you're male or female. That's why everybody has masculinity and femininity within them. Even if you have all masculine signs somehow ruling every single planet, you still have a Venus. You still have femininity in you. Even if that's displayed through a masculine sign, it's still there. The reason why Venus is the female sign is because it's all about love. It's all about romance. It's all about how you love, what you value, what you care about, how you adorn yourself, how you adorn the things around you, how you give and receive love. How are you given love as a child and how do you give love in response to that? Even it can rule like compliments. How pretty were you said that you were told, or how ugly were you felt to be? How were you bullied because you were seen as ugly and as an outcast? Do you have a harsher Venus sign, or were you seen as somebody who was very easy to fit in? Somebody who seamlessly got around in life because you have pretty privilege, right? That's somebody that has a more positive Venus sign. Venus is honestly very, very easy and intuitive to understand because it's all about how we give and receive love. Venus takes approximately 23 days to 2 months, depending because of the retrogrades, to move through one sign of the zodiac. And it takes approximately 225 days to move through the entire 12 zodiac signs. So it's just under a year, actually. Sometimes it can be a lot, faster than a year. Sometimes it can be a little bit much longer than a year, depending on the retrograde and how that goes. So again, kind of similar to Mercury, how you can only have it one sign away from your sun sign, Venus kind of moves close to the sun as well. You can only have Venus 2 signs away on either side to your sun sign. So let's take a much easier sign, like let's take Aries, for example. If you have an Aries sun, your Venus signs can only be Aries sign 1, Taurus sign 2, Gemini sign 3, or Pisces sign 12, and Aquarius sign 11. So again, it makes sense why we kind of have these like archetypes of personality types in the world, because there's only a certain amount of combinations of Sun, Mercury, and Venus signs somebody can have. There's no such thing as a person with an Aries Sun, Scorpio, Venus. That just does not exist. There is no such thing as somebody with an Aries Sun, Libra, Venus, and your Sun is opposite to Venus. Sun opposition Venus does not exist. Venus is also what we're attracted to, right? The kind of person that we're attracted to and what we do and how we attract them. So the sun is like our peacock feathers, what we like to show off, but Venus is how we draw that person in and keep them there, get them to stay. How charming are we? How do we flirt? How much do we flirt? How much does love matter to us? Are we a super duper hyper romantic person that just wants to fall in love and have that movie book romance kind of story tale? Or are we just more introverted and more of an alone person and don't really care as much about love? And the way that we show our Venus sign is more through our hobbies and our interests, right? Because Venus does honestly have a lot to do with the things that you like to do. The things that you like to do as far as people and the things that you like to do as far as interests and activities and hobbies. It's also what we value in life. What do we put our stake in? How do we adorn ourselves? What kind of things do we like to put ourselves in? Do we care a lot about our clothes and how we dress? Are we a Venus in Libra? Or do we not really care so much about as like what we look like? And sometimes we're a little bit absent-minded to how we dress. Are we a Venus in Pisces and we just pick out whatever's closest to us in our laundry hamper? How do we go about showing, giving, and receiving love? What kind of love do we want to receive from a partner? What kind of love do we wind up receiving from a partner in the reality of the sense? Venus is another planet that is ruled by two signs. It is ruled by Taurus and by Libra. The Taurus side of Venus is more about what we value, the kind of items we like to keep in our house, how we like to adorn ourselves, the kind of legacy we want to leave. Whereas Venus in Libra is all about partnership, right? Who we see as our better half, our other half. The Taurus side of Venus is all about loyalty. I picked you, so I'm sticking with you and I'm here for the long haul. The Libra side of Venus is actually a little bit more flaky. I need attention. I need words of affirmation. I need somebody to tell me how lovely I am. So I might be a little bit flakier with love because I just want those personal compliments and I want to be fed grapes every night by somebody new and somebody lovely and somebody fun. All those personality types and tests, I think all have to do and go back to astrology. So for example, if you're wanting to find out what your love language really is, just look to your Venus sign. You know, acts of service, Venus in Virgo, maybe Venus in Capricorn. Words of affirmation, Venus in Libra, Venus in Leo, Venus in Pisces. Physical touch, Venus in Taurus. Receiving gifts, very Venus in Leo, Venus in Aries. Quality time, Venus in Sagittarius, just for example. This also obviously has to do a lot with the house and the aspects, but if you want to know what Venus sign I think your love language is, let me know in the comments and I'll let you know. It's actually a lot easier to figure out than you think. Sometimes your love language is just like time alone. Venus in Aquarius, right? Like I can do my own thing while you do yours. So hopefully you're understanding the personal planets. They're pretty intuitive. And the next one is no difference. Let's go on to Mars. What is Mars in astrology? So if Venus is the sign for females, it's all about love, how you give and receive love, then Mars is of course the male sign. The glyph literally looks like the male symbol. And it has everything to do with fighting, aggression, arguments, sex, your drive, your work ethic, all that kind of stuff. If Venus is how you relax and kick your feet back after a long day of work, Mars is how you do that work. Mars is how you go about getting what you want. If the sun is what you want and the moon is what you need, Mars is how successful or how unsuccessful you are at going about getting what you want and need. Mars takes approximately 1.5 to 2 months to move through one sign. So this is a lot slower. Sometimes it can take a lot longer than that. Like for example, in my year, I'm born in 97 and almost every single person that I was with in my school year has a Mars in Virgo or Mars in Libra because of the retrogrades. So even though Mars is a personal planet, most of the time within your school year, there's only about 3 Mars signs, maybe maximum 4 that people have. So while it is still personal, it does feel a little bit more how you interact with everybody because Mars is such an extroverted planet. It takes approximately 685 days to move through all 12 signs of the zodiac, which is about a little bit over 2 years, depending on the retrogrades. So different to Mercury and Venus, Mars is like the moon. You can have any combination of the sun and Mars, okay? For every sun sign, somebody has every single Mars sign. You can have any aspect with Mars. It is not like Mercury and Venus. Mars, it does whatever it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants. So very Mars. Mars is all about how we fight. When we get into an argument, do we go into fight or flight? Is it more introverted? Is it more extroverted? Will it stick it out and, put up punches? Or will it stand there and verbally attack you? Will it emotionally attack you? Or will it just leave? That's Mars. It's our fighting style. It also has to do with how do we have sex? How do we go about intimacy? Now, intimacy in an emotional way has everything to do with the moon and Venus. But intimacy in a one-night stand, how are we doing the deed, has everything to do with Mars, the physical act of sex. Are you lazy or are you all about getting off your ass and doing the damn thing? That's very much Mars. Mars is everything that has to do with your work ethic. Again, it also has to do with how do you go about getting what what you want in life? Do you attack it head first, set a bunch of goals, don't take no for an answer? Do you have a very extroverted, goal-oriented Mars? Or do you kind of go back and forth, and do you mull over things? Are you a little bit unsure of your next move? Unsure about how you'll go about things? Is your Mars a little bit more introverted or a little bit more indecisive? Is your Mars a lot more intellectual, and how you go about things is through a much more strategic way? Or is your Mars a lot more, acting in the here and now, I'm just gonna wing it kind of thing? Do you have a lot of drive to get up in the morning? Mars will say that. If you're a morning person or are you a night person, Mars will probably say that. Are you excited to take on the day, or do you dread it and do you drag your heels every day? Your sun might be in a really extroverted, like hoo-ha sign, but your Mars might be a little bit dull and a little bit lackadaisical. So you might not relate as much to all the extroverted things that people will say about your sun sign, because your Mars sign is very much not that way. Or maybe your sun, moon, or rising is much more introverted and quiet, but yet you have a very, very, very outspoken, strong, harsh Mars, and maybe even Mercury. And so you're very loud, and you don't relate to all those meek things that are said about your sun, moon, and rising, because your Mars is just so on it, so extroverted, so determined. Determination and goal setting has everything to do with Mars. Are you going to get all your tasks done before you go to bed, or are you going to procrastinate them? That's what Mars has everything to do with. Mars is, of course, a very masculine energy. It's very extroverted. It's how we go about life, how we get what we want out of life. Is the world our oyster, or do we feel like the world happens to us and we just watch it go by as we live it? Mars is also another planet that has co-rulership. It has two signs that it rules. It rules Aries and it rules Scorpio. And that makes sense. There's kind of those two sides to Mars. The Aries side of Mars is all about, I want this, I'm gonna go after it. Your drive, your sex drive, your ambition. Like, I kind of mentioned this in the last video, but I think of the Aries side of Mars as the Marine. Right? I'm gonna go out in the battlefield. I'm gonna attack what I need to. I'm gonna take down who I need to. I'm gonna kill. I'm gonna go after what I need. I'm gonna get what I want. I'm gonna attack. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna conquer. I'm gonna be on top. Mars is all about how you conquer, how you win, how competitive are you. That is very much the Aries side of Mars. And then we have the other side of Mars, Scorpio. Scorpio sits back and strategizes, okay? Scorpio is that war strategy side of Mars. Okay, let me think about my actions before I do them. The Scorpio side of Mars sees life as a chess game, Oh, I know they're gonna move their rook over here, so I'm gonna move my queen over here and expect them next because they're very predictable and they're an Aries Mars, for example. I know they're gonna move their queen. And then when they do those two moves, I can take their queen with my knight, for example, right? Mars is also all about war strategy or just life strategy. How do you strategize going about life and getting what you want? Aries is that side of Mars that's just gonna get their nut and only cares about, what they want out of sex, what they want out of life. Scorpio is a lot more the reflective side of Mars. Okay, the more intimate side of Mars. I want to conquer this person. I don't want to just have my way with them and leave them. I want to conquer them, and I want to have an emotional, lasting effect on them. I want the thing that I make, even creatively, to stick in the world, right? I want to leave a lasting mark on this person sexually, even. I want to leave a lasting mark on this profession that I do. So Mars isn't all about just kind of blindly going out and getting what you want. It is about that, but it's also, even when you're at a club and you see a hot person from afar, how am I going to go about getting that hot person? Is that Scorpio side of Mars, that strategy. If you actually go after them and you decide to take, to be extroverted and go after them, that's going to tell you, if you do that, that's going to be your Mars sign. Now, if you just sit back and think about it, that's also your Mars sign. Your Mars sign is a lot more introverted. It's kind of scared to go up to them. But then once you go up to them and you meet them, that's when you turn on your Venus sign. That's when you turn on your charm. That's when you turn on your appeal. That's when you turn on, getting what you want in a more Venusian way. But whether or not you actually decided to go up to that person at the club, That's your Mars sign. It really just has to do with how passive or how active are you. How do you go about getting what you want? And Venus is about what you want. The sun is about how you want people to see you, what you want out of life, okay? What you personally want out of life. Where Venus is like what you want out of everything else in life. How you want life to get out of you. Like Yoda over here, oh my god. And in the moon, at the end of the day, we can bargain with our sun sign. We can bargain with our Venus. We can bargain with our Mars. But I personally do not think we can ever bargain with our moon sign. If our moon sign is not happy, if our moon sign is not satisfied, if our emotional life is not satisfied, we are not happy. We are not content. We are not satisfied. So this video is just a really long way to explain why I think the moon is so important in astrology. All right, so that is the inner planets in astrology. The sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, as well as the rising sign, just because I do think it's an important thing to talk about. In the next video, I will talk about the outer planets or the social/generational planets, which will be Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And I'll also talk about the North and South node. My free Learn Astrology course playlist will be linked down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I sell full birth chart readings. If you want me to dissect your birth chart because, you know, maybe you know pieces of the puzzle, but you don't know how it all talks to itself, that is what an astrologer will do. That is what I do in a birth chart reading. I sell them on my website, shainaemily.com. Again, I've been super active on my TikTok at shaina.emily. And if you'd like to check it out, I have a personal Instagram all about my dogs. All right, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching this video and thank you for supporting me. Bye.